Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Richmond Mayor Forum, sponsored by the Richmond Civic and Commerce. And thank you for coming out tonight. I'm Randy Rothstein. I'll be your moderator. We have 3 candidates for the office of mayor. That'll happen next Tuesday night. And so if you haven't voted already, please make sure that you put that on your schedule to vote next Tuesday. A few housekeeping things we want to go over here first of all. This is a forum. This is not a debate, so we want to keep that in mind. A forum gives the candidates the opportunity to take some pre-prepared questions that the Civic and Commerce, an outside party, has selected. Each candidate submitted 8 questions. From those questions, we whittled it down. We have 12 questions here tonight that are prepared. There were also some questions from some city residents that were considered to be part of our forum tonight. So those questions are in front of our candidates right now. This is the first time they've seen them tonight. So it'll kind of be off the cuff, but at least they have an idea of what we're talking about with the questions in front of them. As far as who's going to answer first, when are they going to answer, we drew before. Mr. Evans will go first, Mr. Hemish will go second, and Mrs. Monins will go third for the first question. And then we will continue to rotate. Each candidate will get the opportunity to answer those questions first. And we'll continue with that through the 12 questions tonight. We will be going on a 3-minute time limit. So Scott will throw up the 30-second sign if there's 30 seconds remaining of the 3 minutes, and he will throw up the blank sign if 3 minutes has expired. So we ask the candidates just to watch Scott over here. If the 30 is up, be prepared to end your answering. We want to thank Terry and Tina Memkin for again allowing us to have this forum here tonight at the Old Coliseum. Thank you, Terry and Tina. Definitely a nice venue to have this at. We also remind you, please turn off your cell phones. At least put them on mute. We would like no interruptions during the forum tonight. And also, this is being taped right now by our local cable channel, and it will play Thursday through Monday at 7 p.m. So if you want to see a broadcast, or if you want to tell your friends to watch, you certainly can do that, 7 p.m. Thursday through Monday. All right, there will be an opportunity at the end. If you want to ask a question, part of this forum, you can ask a question. But again, please make sure that you generalize that question. We are not targeting any one candidate specific. Each candidate will be allowed to answer that question. So again, just generalize the question if you do want to ask a question at the end of the forum. This is scheduled to go till 8 o'clock tonight. If we do run over, I guess I will allow your questions to be answered, but again, if Scott sees that it's going too late, he will throw up the sign, and the Civic and Commerce will make a call when to end the forum tonight. So, without further ado, let's get on with our Mayor Forum, and we're going to start, and I'm going to reference Pat Evans as Mr. Evans, Jim Hemish as Mr. Hemish, and Emily Monins as Mrs. Monins. So that's how they will be referenced within this forum tonight, and I'll be handing this microphone over to them as we go on. So, the first question tonight to the candidates is, what do you feel? Yes? Introduction and background. I'm sorry, I didn't read that. Okay, let's I wrote these questions. Okay. Let's do an introduction and background with Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Randy. My name is Pat Evans. I'm seeking the office of the Mayor of the City of Richmond. I am 63 years young. My wife Jerry and I enjoy Richmond, spending time with our daughter and our new little granddaughter. My hobbies are fishing, hunting, bingo, movies, and spending a lot of time with my granddaughter. I'm a member of the St. Peter and Paul Parish. I'm currently a senior refurb tech at the Burnix Companies in Way Park, Minnesota. I also have a seasonal business located in Richmond. My past experiences include 17 years at the St. Cloud Technical College as a coordinator and instructor in the fire and EMS field. I had the privilege of being your mayor from the year 1992 to 2000. During that time, we developed an awesome park system, built a new library, and improved emergency services with very little impact to the taxpayers.
I'm Mayor Jim Hemish. I'm also running for mayor, obviously. My background is I've been married to my wife for 22 years. I have 5 grown children, with the last one just graduating this past fall or spring. My life, I've been a firefighter for the last 8 years, and I enjoy doing it. I also am the president of the Catholic United Financial, and I look forward to being your leader again for the next 2 years. I think I've done a fairly good job over the 8 years out of the last 10 that I've been the mayor, and I've been working for your tax dollars. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Emily Anschberger. I live in town here with my husband. Oh, thank you. And I have 2 wonderful boys, Dominic, who's 4, and Tristan, who is a young adult. I operate a in-home daycare business in town. I don't have the extensive background as these gentlemen do, and they've done a great job for us. However, prior to daycare, I was in the sales and marketing and worked for several startup companies, which was an exciting opportunity for me. I'm a representative on the St. Peter and Paul School Board, and I'm also part of the River Lake Days Committee.
All right, thank you to our candidates, their introduction. And now we will begin with the formal questions. So I will go back to Mr. Evans. And Mr. Evans, what do you feel is the role of the mayor?
My role as mayor would definitely be as a problem. Technical. How's that? Better? Okay. As the role of mayor, one of the biggest items that I believe is the role is to be a problem solver, along with being available for the citizens, to be in contact with you, be open-minded, have the let's make it work attitude, no matter what it is, whether I believe 100% in it or not. It's an ever-changing city. It's an ever-changing community. So to take criticism is part of the job, no matter how you look at it. Open-minded, problem solver, and a person where the buck stops right here. We're going to get an answer for you, one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Hamish.
My role as a mayor is, I feel it's leadership. You have to show leadership and directing the council on where and what we should be doing. Obviously taking encouragement from and information from all the residents, and not always agreeing with everything, but yet understanding where everybody comes from. When they bring a problem, that's their problem, and they want the city to address it. And I enjoy having that one-on-one conversation and trying to understand their side of things. And the end result is to come up with an answer for them that maybe they're not always happy with it, but to understand where the city comes from, how they come up with their answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. Mrs. Mons.
I feel the role of the mayor is an advocacy role. It's a role where you are representing your community, the residents, the businesses in town. And the gentleman said as well too, is that your choices aren't always. Can you hear? Is this better? Sorry, ladies. Your role is counselor for the community. Your role is to provide guidance, provide leadership, to be that front face for the community, and likely, Jim probably can correct me if I'm wrong, possibly a little referee from time to time.
Thank you, Mrs. Monitz. All right, we'll move on to our second question tonight. And Mr. Hemish will go first here. What would your 5 to 10 year future planning strategy look like for the city of Richmond?
For the next 5 to 10 years, the city has a plan put together. We actually have a 20-year plan. We work in units of 5. Every 5 years, if you've known, we've always done a street project. 2009, we did a street project which was Central and South Side. And in 2013, we did Main Street. And on board for next year is the 2019 project. So the way the city is set up for every 5 years is to do a street project. Yes, it sometimes affects certain people in certain areas, but our city is built in different sections, so you have roads that are 10 years old, 20 years old, or like some of the street project for 2019, you're talking 40-year-old streets that have never been anything done since they were put in. Between having projects like that and making sure you keep improving whatever streets you can, and obviously holding down the taxes in the process of not trying to spend more money. And the other part is we have 2 developments that are kind of getting underway. One's been annexed in a while, and one we just annexed in this past year. So we have some residential areas going, and we're going to have some commercial. If they take off, great. If not, maybe there has to be some more work on the city side to help that developer get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hemish. Mrs. Monitz.
Thank you. My 5 to 10 year future planning strategy, what that looks for the city, multiple things that go into that. I feel that some of the focus that we have to do in Richmond is definitely take a look at our housing, and I feel that we could improve on the ability of keeping our young adults in town instead of setting them off and hoping they come back. Jim's done a great job with his road planning, and I would definitely continue on with the strategy that he has as well too. Our businesses, we need to build some storefronts. Take a look at that and how to keep that up. And we've got those answers in-house. We've got some businesses that are so well established, and they can help us in reaching out to past businesses to figure out where that gap was. Building our community stronger, and also incorporating the traffic that we have out on the lakes and bringing that in town, into the city, as would be a key goal of mine as well too.
Thank you, Mrs. Monitz. Mr. Evans.
Well, my 5 and 10 year future planning would be a little bit different than Mayor Hemish's. I don't look at 5 years as a plan to rebuild roads and streets. I look at the ones that are worn and torn. It's time to get repaired properly right away. We'll extend that road life an additional 20, 25 years. A study was done a few years ago up in Duluth, Minnesota, when we're talking about 40-year water and sewer life. They dug up some water and sewer lines that were over 120 years old, and the piping company took it and cut it apart, and it had so very little wear and tear on it that it could have went another 50 years, they were claiming. So with that, my opinion would be if we have roads that need repairing, let's not wait 5 years. Let's get it done. It's cheaper now than to put it on one big bond issue, scare the people of payments and taxes. Let's get it done. At home, you folks don't wait 5 years to paint your house. You do it right away. When it's starting to chip, when it's starting to peel, you paint it. You don't wait that length period of time. Yes, this is a bigger scale, large scale. We're not talking, $150 to paint a house. We're talking, $150,000 to do a city block when it comes to water, sewer, and tar. So we do have differences there. I would be definitely in favor of replacing any type of worn roads as they deteriorate, not waiting 5 years or 10 years, if that would be the case. If you don't make the 5-year cut, does that mean you wait another 5 years before you get your potholes fixed? So we definitely disagree there. Other items that we would be interested in is our city is getting a little bit, I'm not going to be politically correct here, I know I am saying elderly. It's getting aged a little bit, so let's have some type of housing that would be affordable for those folks. And, you know, go on with some of the other type of housing, whether it be multiple family for middle-aged individuals. Other items that I would look at in the 5-year plan is how far are we going to expand or not expand? How far are we going to annex or not annex? That's what we're after. Find out. We cannot just stay put in our little cocoon here. We have to look into the broad picture. That would be my 10-year area to look at. 5 years, I would definitely look at housing, bring more people to town, which will make our businesses thrive a little bit more. I'm getting the 30-second. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. All right, on that 5 to 10 year future planning strategy, our next question is, what could the city of Richmond do over the next 5 years to entice businesses to Main Street? And we'll start this questioning with Mrs. Mons.
I think to entice new business to Main Street, I've got to eat the microphone, I'm told. To entice businesses to Richmond, we got to fill our gaps, find our gaps, figure out why businesses aren't coming, why they came, why they left, what's working for the new businesses, the businesses that are here, what are their successes, what are their challenges, take a consideration into what the whole community needs. You know, my opinion is just my opinion, and as mayor, it's not about my opinion, it's about all of your opinion, and that's really what it comes down to for me. You know, I can see, in my vision, I see that a hotel would be beneficial for us. We have a lot of seasonal sports, outdoor sports. We've got hockey. We've got the Old Coliseum for the events. It makes sense to me. I see a community center that can serve our young and our elderly as well too. But those are my opinions. To entice them is to find out what you all think, and then to figure out our gaps and to fill those gaps. And then I feel that businesses that already have a clientele that can come and follow here would be good as well too. And there's to focus on trying to get the seasonal people down at the campgrounds and at the resorts, get them in town. How can we get them in town? I've seen them go less and less over the years, and that's an important fact for our business. If we can provide the traffic, we'll have prospering businesses.
Thank you, Mrs. Monitz. Mr. Evans.
How would I entice new business to Main Street? Well, first of all, I tried to do this a few years ago as a member of the EDA. I was one of the first people that brought up the beautification project of our Main Street. It was used very well the first year. Then it kind of laid back for a few years. Since then, they have upped the ante, which would be a matching funds to rebuild some of the fronts. But they made it a little bit more complicated with insurance policies and titles and things like this, rather than let's just, if the individual owns the property, let's help them remodel the property. And if they're going to rent it out after that, or if they're going to start a business themselves, we have to assist with that. There is money in the budgets for this. Other ways of enticing it, after the younger community, what would you like? And along with that, I would definitely do a survey of the younger community and find out what business would you like. Years ago, and this will probably date me, you know, was you rented VCRs or whatever, tapes. There's something new every day out there. Before that, I know that on our Main Street, Jerry Dolls, and this dates back to the 70s, put in the first game room or pinball area, whatever. It went on for quite some time. Then he expanded to a different area. Along with that, be very open-minded to anybody that comes in when it comes to whatever business it is. I might not be interested in buying or dealing with widgets or something like that, but maybe there's a lot of population that would be. But to definitely help and support that individual that would like to start a business there. Sometimes as a mayor, you can look at the bottom line, but you also have to be somewhat of a little bit of a risk taker. Hopefully it's a guaranteed type of item, but they don't always fall in your place. So to be out there, be open-minded, and let's bring in a beautiful downtown that people can walk down, spend some time. We have benches on Main Street right now. Let's maybe go a little bit further. Let's do other items where they can enjoy watching the world go by. So with that, definitely make it back to a friendly city, and to be open-minded for any little type of business that will be available to come in.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Hemish.
How to entice new businesses. It's not just all about Main Street. Yes, Main Street's a vital part of our city, but I look at the city as a whole, because everybody on Main Street, all the way down to the post office, all the way to the other end of town, every business helps all the other businesses. Everybody complained to me that when we left Dollar General come in, and yet now you see more and more people coming into town. They stop at Dollar General, and guess where they come? They come to Blankenberg's or Food Pride, or they come to the bars or wherever. To me, enticing businesses, we have to keep up with some of the programs we're offering to redo their fronts. You know, it's not a lot of money, but it's something that helps some of the newer businesses have a chance to start. The other one would be maybe the city has to partner with the bank and figure out a way how to allow businesses to come in. That's the biggest thing I hear from a lot of young owners is times have changed. The money isn't available quite as easy as it used to be to start a business. I have a prime example, my movie star building. I've had 3 people look into it, and when they go for the financing, that's when it stops, because they have to have too much money down compared to what things used to be. So either the city's gonna have to figure out how we can help some new young businesses, you know, putting some guarantees in for them, or maybe helping reduce some. Maybe it's reducing their taxes for a year or 2. You know, right now, a lot of those, that would be $2,500. I mean, for a starting business, $2,500 for a small company is a big deal. Other than that, I think we've always been looking for new businesses. I bet a lot of people don't even know that we have a shrimp farm here in the city. And nobody probably can tell me where it is, except for maybe 1 or 2 neighbors that live next to it. But I mean, it's a prime example of a business that's here that nobody really knows about. And, you know, there's a lot of other businesses in town, and, you know, to get some of the storefronts that are empty, it takes 2 people to get a lot. One the seller and one for a business and somebody with a great idea to come to Richmond. And we've talked to how many hotel owners, different places around here. We tried like the same one that Eden Valley has, a drive-up card type hotel, and everybody tells us there's not enough walking traffic or driving traffic here to have one. So that's kind of where the city stood with the hotel idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. Moving on to our next question. The City of Richmond has some of the highest fees for services in the area. Is this a problem? And if so, how would you remedy this? We'll start with Mr. Evans.
Yes, the city does have definitely the highest fees when it comes to sewer and water. We have a very elite sewer plant, which has so much capability, it's unbelievable. The item that has been left on the table the last couple of years is that some of our neighboring cities, we had the opportunity to go sell Richmond to those folks and bring them on in. At that time, the council decided just to send the engineer to do what they're talking for the city. I do believe that one of the council people did go to one of those meetings. That was the time to really just sell. To use the services 100%. Definitely, it's not the way to go to put a $50 fee on it, to penalize the honest person that all of a sudden had an oops, forgot it by a day, left it on the counter, or whatever. My remedy to this is, first of all, is that do a whole what you would say, a study of the plant, not the workings as much as the operating of it. A couple years ago, when I sat on the council, there was a firm that wanted to come on in and bid the operation of it. At that time, they said they could save us thousands and thousands of dollars on the operation of it. The stand that the council took at that time was everything's going good and let's just go on. They did not take a bid, they did not look at bidding out. I believe if we can save anywhere from $1,000 to $50,000, you should have it bid. And the person that's operating it now, if they're interested in staying operating, they'll also bid it. So that would be my remedy, making sure that the usage out there is the most efficient that's possible. So we're not running our pumps for no reason. People are having, you know, water softeners run, toilets run, whatever. That's not helping. Public awareness, along with bidding out the different services, I believe is going to be definitely an improvement and a savings for the people of the city.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Hemish.
Yes, I understand our services are high, our fees, but there's a reason we got to this point. We had the opportunity to join Cold Spring many years ago to have our sewer plant go over there, and just like Rockville did now, our services would be half the cost. But at the time, the council decided to build their own, just like all the other cities have. And we talked about looking for other people to come here. I personally went to St. Martin at least a dozen times and met with their council, I met with their mayor, I met with the engineers, we talked about all the different ways. We've had 2 meetings with Roscoe. They also have to build a new one. I've also met with them at least 2 different times. And everything came down to the same problem Richmond had. Nobody trusts to go to the next city and do business. So as far as those fees, yes, I'm sorry that the sewer plant costs us what it does, but in the same thing, we have a $9 million plant that's, no matter what we're gonna do, it's gonna be there, it's gonna cost the city money, and we've been doing things, we refinanced it, which brought our costs down. We've been doing everything that we can to try to make that reduction of price per household less, but sometimes the dollars are there. You have to spend the amount of money that it costs to run the plant. How to remedy this? You know, there's other ways of looking at, you know, if we expand and get more houses and more usage, that also helps with the bills. The more, you know, if we had one big company come in like let's say like Cold Spring Granite or like the brewery, that's how Cold Spring makes their money. They have the big plants that pay a lot of money. And the highest fee that, you know, we talked about, the last one, is the water bill. The only reason the city went to a $50 late charge is because at the $10, there was people, we were averaging 150 people per 2-month cycle that just didn't pay their bill. And then Cindy would have to call and call and call. And I did some research. I went and looked at what other cities charge. The city of Painesville charges $150 if you're late with your water bill. The city of Eaton Valley charges $75. So we're still way below all our neighbors as far as what fees we charge on some things. I'm not saying it's going to get any better, but until we can get some of our costs down, the fees are going to have to stay, or it's going to come on your taxes. And I don't think anybody likes to pay any more taxes than they have to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hemish. Mrs. Mons.
The water bill. I feel that pain, and a lot of you do too, and I trust Jim has done everything that he can. And I like as well too, and I agree with Pat in regards to having a consultant come in and take a look at what we have and what we can do. It is what it is. We have the opportunity, like Jim said, to team up with Cold Spring. It's gone. We have our plant. How are we going to manage it? I am no water and city expert by any means, but there's a team at the city that is. And it's just digging around, throwing ideas out, and finding solutions on how to lower the residents' cost. That's my answer.
Thank you, Mrs. Monitz. All right, moving on. this question. Do you feel the financial footprint for Richmond is solid? If not, how would you create a firmer financial footing for the city? Mr. Henish.
I feel our financial footprint is fairly solid now. For the last 8 to 10 years since I've been mayor, we've actually been able to put money away and be able to do some of the projects that we would like to do when we can do them versus, well, we don't have the money, we have to borrow it from somewhere to pay it. And that's not a very good remedy in the long run. When I became mayor the first time, we actually put in a few things. We put CIP money away, so every time you see something get replaced, that money's been put away for years, maybe $500 or $1,000 at a time. So we don't have no big expenditures no more. A lot of them are all kind of money saved up, money kind of forward thinking of putting money away and having it there when we need it. And the other part is about 3-4 years ago, I had a meeting. I brought in all the developers that do most of the developing around here. I brought in the bank, and we had a sit down all together and try to figure out what's the best way to make Richmond grow. And some of it was one of the things we did. We reduced what our fees were for a building permit. Yes, you can say $2,500 ain't a lot, but if you're a person building a new house, $2,500 is $2,500. It's a start. And the other thing is trying to work with people to make things happen. It takes two to make a party. So you have to have the city get along with whoever and try to ride them in the right direction towards maybe a piece of property or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. Mrs. Monitz?
I do feel our financial footprint for Richmond is fairly solid. I also feel that it's important to be a little more transparent about it and have easier access to the information as a member of this community regarding what the city is doing, the decisions and what they're making. I've always felt that a bottom-up project planning is necessary. So you're going to start the projects at the bottom and work your way up to the bigger. And like what Jim was talking about, you save, you plan. But I do feel that Richmond is not on shaky grounds financially.
Thank you, Mrs. Monitz. Mr. Evans?
I do agree with the other candidates that I feel that the financial footprint of Richmond is very solid. Not only that, but our reputation of our footprint out there. Take a few years ago when we bonded some money for a recreational bond for the arena, we had private individuals asking to buy the bonds. Private individuals would not gamble their money if they didn't know that there was definitely going to be a return there. Besides other financial institutions, they basically lined up waiting to give you that money to do that for your community. So when it comes to financial footprint, I think we're very solid. I believe our bond rating is 100%, and I would definitely want to keep it that way. We don't want to borrow more money than we would ever have to, because it's easy to get the money. It's always hard to pay it back.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. All right, moving on to what we all love in taxes, the conversation. The city of Richmond is in the top 1/3 of the highest tax rates in Stearns County. Now, do you feel this is a problem? Why or why not? Mrs. Monitz.
Well, I feel that being in the top 1/3 of the highest tax rates in Stearns County, I don't like it. I pay my taxes. They're high. I know they're high compared to other cities. So I feel that it is a problem. I don't have a solution to solve this. This is not my area of expertise, but I know where to get information. I know how to go about and finding what we need in order to solve this and what this takes. I think as our community grows, the problem will certainly start to feel less achy in our pocketbooks in regards to taxes. But we do have a community, and I feel like our tax money does is well spent as well too. So I'm gonna let the boys take over because I know they're gonna have a lot more to say than me on this.
Thank you, Mrs. Monitz. Mr. Evans?
Okay, taxes is always kind of fun to talk about. It's always the son of a gun to pay them. 2 times a year is the worst days of these May 15th and October 15th. But when it comes down to it is, the question is just a little bit deceiving. We're not in the top third. We are a little bit less, we're number 12 out of 30. And it goes by tax capacity rates of Stearns County. And this is all available through the auditor's office. So it's easy to figure out. What they do is they come up with a percentage that's multiplied times your valuation of your house. And if you take a look at a $100,000 house, and I know there's not too many of those out there, but the city of Richmond right now, our tax capacity is 68.690. So basically a $100,000 house, you'd be paying $686.89 city taxes. If you have a $200,000 home, it would be $1,360 some and change. The problem with this and keeping that tax rate up there and making the budget high is why can't we develop? Why can't we annex? The reason is the townships don't want to, the people out in the townships don't want to. Now, I know there's a lot of facts and a lot of figures, but just take for instance, ours is at our multiplier is at 68.68. Munson Township, right across the road from us, in different areas, is 14.3. Wakefield Township is 19.0. Farming Township, 20.0. Eden Lake Township, 18.4. So the city has basically your taxes on your residential home. This does not include businesses, because that's higher yet, is multiplied times that tax capacity rate. And these figures are 2018 figures. So when you start talking about this, this is one of the reasons why we can't get our neighbors to our townships to come and get our services. For the simple reason is, would you annex to a place and try to figure out saying, take for instance Munson, 14.34. Ours is 68, a 4 times increase on your property tax. That's without the school district, and that's without the county. So with that, yes, we have other services. Those people use the pencil and figure it out too. They definitely have to figure out what the services are worth. Are they worth 3 times the amount? So when it comes to taxes, it definitely has to be looked at. How can we make this a well-run, sleek type of ship that's going to go? I got 2 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Hemish?
Yes, we have one of the highest tax rates, and I'm proud because for the last 10 years that I've been there, we have never raised taxes. We've raised on capacity, but we've never actually raised the taxes. So I'm pretty proud of that fact that this coming year will be the first time ever that we've raised taxes while I was mayor. And the only reason we're raising them is because we have a $3.5 million project that we're looking at doing next year. So to me, it's kind of a, somehow you want to spend and do that kind of project, you got to have the money to help pay for it. And do I feel that it's a problem? Yes, I would love to see our taxes go down. But we have a, like I said earlier, a $9 million plant sitting down on the corner that has to get paid for. And that has to come from somewhere. And the council at that time decided to put it on your taxes. So that's where the money comes from. How do you remedy that? You annex more property. Obviously, if the 2 properties on the east end of town, if we can actually get some businesses out there and get them thriving, that'll help. Every time you add a business or add a house, your taxes in reality will lower. Just for the fact that tax capacity gets spread out amongst whoever else is owning those properties. Yes, I'd love to see a nice big business come because that would help. You know, you get a couple $1 million piece of property out there that's developed, it'll help lower your taxes by them paying more of the piece of the pie. That's all I have for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. Mrs. Munns. She did. All right. Okay. I'm sorry. All right. Okay. So we've got about halfway through our questions here tonight, and our next question has been referenced by the candidates a little bit already, but let's dig a little deeper into this next question. And does Richmond maximize the disposal plant? Mr. Evans.
I feel it does not maximize it. If we're only using about 20% of the plant, as what I heard the last time the figure was out, there's other ways of doing it. I mean, it just sounds like a small way, but why don't we have a dump station that we could charge for recreational vehicles? We have all kinds of campers, all kinds of trailers out here south of town on the lakes. They're looking for places to dump their waste when the weekend's over. If we would have a dump station, Melrose has one. They actually don't charge for it, but they have major industry up there. If we would have a fee for that, that would just be a small tip. Maybe be only pennies of operation. But if we think out of the box, there's other ways. Annexation, definitely. But to have somebody annexation again with the taxes, that's a very questionable item. When we start talking about major businesses, and you're talking about deed programs, and you're talking about all these type of programs to come on in, yeah, that's a shot in the dark. But it can be done. What it takes is a lot of campaigning out there and taking Richmond's name and putting it on the map with a lot of different people and get that one Kraft Foods or get that one Pilgrim's Pride or somebody that could come on in and use this capacity. Would it be an idea of annexing, of allowing the townships to come in and not pay taxes and use the plant? I'm not quite sure if I would be in on that. That definitely would be an idea that would have to have a lot of study. Because if they're not paying taxes and just using our services, that's hard to swallow. You folks paid for that plant. So that was one idea a while ago when one of the developments north of town had a water problem, is to sell water out to them at a higher rate, but they wouldn't pay taxes. I wouldn't have any problem with doing something like that if there is a light at the end of the tunnel saying that the items that are the residents or businesses being hooked up would definitely have a 5-year sunset clause saying that in 5 years or 7 years they automatically annex in. At least then we know that in a long-term route we definitely would have some relief with it. So there's different ways if we think out of the box.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Hamish.
Do I feel we're maximizing our plant? No. Like Mr. Evans said, we're only using about 20-25% of the plant. The plant was designed for future development, which at the time was booming when it was put in, but it obviously never happened. We have been working on other projects. We've had other people, like private disposal plants, wanting to dump here. You know, we've set up some fee schedules for that. We've actually had one of the companies, local companies here, that dumps every day down at the plant. But our biggest thing that we've always been concerned about dumping at the plant is we don't want to have something come in that's going to deteriorate our plant or ruin our plant, because obviously none of those people are paying the taxes here. None of them are paying for that plant. And we don't want to have something come in that's going to destroy the plant, which hopefully will be the last plant Richmond ever has to build, with other than just some maintenance to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. Mrs. Monitz?
So we already know we don't maximize the disposal plant. And like Pat said, it's thinking out of the box and figuring out how we do it. And like Jim said, is maintaining the integrity of the residents that do pay for the plant. Again, I don't really have a lot to say on this because this is not an expertise that I'm as experienced, knowledgeable as the guys are here. But I believe that again that we have a team at the city that is capable to come up with ideas for us to help us maximize it. It's what we have already now as well. as the growth of the community, like Jim was saying. Sorry, I got a bug. I don't want to call on me. Eventually, as development occurs, the water costs are going to go down, and the plant will be utilized to its full possibilities.
Thank you, Mrs. Monitz. All right, moving on. How would you rate Richmond Cold Spring Police Department, maybe using that 1 to 5, how would you rate it, in terms of keeping our residents safe and enforcing our city ordinances? Mr. Henish.
I think our police department does a great job of protecting our residents, keeping them safe. And for most of you that have lived here your whole life, if you go step back about 20 years ago, 15 years ago, you could have drove around town and you could have told me where I could go get this or go get that, just because you know those people were doing it. Nowadays, that don't happen so easy. Our police department drives around every street all the time, and they're not, they're not the local Barney Fife. They're actually somebody that cares. They drive around, they don't care who it is. If you're doing something wrong, they're gonna pull you over. Or they're gonna stop and tell you, you know, maybe you should get a license on that vehicle, or maybe you should get your tabs done. You know, those kinds of things. It's not always that they're enforcing the law, but they're just trying to help people out. I've seen them many a time stop people and say, you know what, your license expired 2 days ago. Make sure you go get that before I give you a ticket. You know, and it's kind of interesting when you listen to them talk sometimes when you have a conversation with them. You know, most people, well, yeah, I was speeding, but I was, and it's like, they're like, just tell me the truth. You know you were speeding. They tell them, most times they give you a warning. And every month they come and they give us a report. And it's kind of interesting to see, because obviously sometimes you don't realize certain things happen in your city that are happening. And some of those things the city council can help with by, you know, like some of our ordinances. We've had a problem with people not cutting the grass and leaving, you know, wood piles and other things lay around. And that's why the city this year had pushed to have the police department run through the ordinances to kind of help clean up the city. And that's for everybody. That's for the health reasons of not having rodents around or having other problems. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hemish. Mrs. Monitz.
I think our police department is amazing. I think that they do a great job at keeping our community safe and keeping our community secure. They do a good job at enforcing the city ordinance that they're aware of. I think they're also invested in our community. I can speak on my behalf regarding my daycare and my daycare kids. They're not afraid to throw on their flashers. They're not afraid to stop and take the time to say hi to the kids. I've called them for odd situations, not emergencies, just odd things, because they've always treated me with utmost respect and taken what could have seemed silly as a serious matter, and have done their part. They're a valuable member of our community, and I am very proud to call all of the officers over there, that call them the people that keep me and my family safe.
Thank you, Mrs. Monitz. Mr. Evans.
On a scale of 1 to 10, the Richmond Cold Spring Police Department, in my opinion, would be 1 to 5. They limited us to is a 5. A few questions that I have would be to ask the chief, which I have asked the past 2 chiefs that were there, if the city could get a printout after the fact of how many hours are actually spent in the city of Richmond. We do get a report of how many accidents, how many arrests, how many DUIs, how many speeding and everything else, but how many hours do you actually spend? History of this is kind of goes back a few years when it started. They were saying that Richmond was supposed to pay approximately 20% of the total bill. Well, and then they guaranteed 2 officers on duty in between Richmond and Cold Spring. Well, if you take 2 officers times 24 hours a day, it comes up with 48 hours. 20% of that is 9.6 hours. And if they could just explain where those hours are, if they are in the office making out reports for 4 hours, that satisfies me. And 4 hours of patrol, that would average for that day. But I have a hard time sometimes paying hundreds of thousands of dollars per year and just saying, yep, your streets are safe. I would like to have a little bit more explanation to it, but I think we definitely can rate them a 5.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. The Richmond Fire Department and Chain of Lakes Fire Department do not share services. If elected mayor, would you work to improve the relationship between these two departments? Mrs. Mullins.
Would I work to improve the relationship between the departments? Absolutely. And I know that the two departments are beginning to work better together. Is it okay to have 2 of them? I think so. I think it's fine. Is it okay to have 1? Absolutely. As long as they play well together. If we can share the services and utilize both departments, we're all benefiting from it.
Thank you, Mrs. Mullins. Mr. Evans.
Coming from a 30-plus years background in fire and rescue, I definitely believe that they can get together. It was politics that took them apart. It's not the memberships. The training is double, the equipment is double. You know, people say, well, the response time in your neighboring area is a lot longer than in the city, very possibly. But on the other hand, are we utilizing the money that is used as tax money for the departments if we don't try to get them to work together? We have to try to get this back together some way. It was politics that brought it apart. Very simple. It wasn't the manpower, wasn't the training, wasn't anything like that. It was definitely all politics. So with that, yes, I would work hard at working them together and making sure that all the citizens in the area, because you got to look at it, it's not just, I'm going to use some township names, it's not, you know, just Richmond alone. We have relatives in Munson Township, Wakefield Township, Eden Lake Township, you know, St. Martin Township that we used to cover. And you want the best for them as they want the best for you. So you definitely would want the top line of equipment, top line of manpower. I understand that the city of Richmond is up to maximum right now, but they're always advertising. Same with the Chain of Lakes is always advertising. So that means there is a manpower issue to keep them fully staffed. So with that, it would be asinine if we wouldn't work together or try to get together and get the entities working.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Hemish.
As your mayor, we have been working to mend fences with the townships. We've actually had meetings with them. We've actually talked to them about joining forces together again. But in the same thing that always happens at the end of the conversation, they always tell us we can come join them anytime we want to. Well, the city doesn't want to go join the township fire department. The city has a fire department that's been 120 years plus, and the city council and myself have taken a lot of pride in the fire department of the guys that we have, the great response we have, the camaraderie they have. And to me, it's not fair for our firefighters to just sell out and say, oh, you got to go over there and whatever they tell you, that's what's going to be. To me, it needs to be the townships and the city to work together to come back to the table and hash out some differences, because we're both spending the same amount of money, which is about $90,000 on each side of the fence to have a fire department on our own. Obviously, you would think that 2 fire departments together could run for a lot less money, and I believe that would be the point. I mean, before we left, the townships left, we were running about $130,000 to $135,000. So obviously the city's spending a little less now, but the townships were paying part of that bill as well. So I would love to continue to work with them and try to figure out something to make everybody happy, but until both sides can sit in the same room and play fair, it's going to be a hard road to hoe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. All right, moving on to our next question. In your opinion, how does Richmond compare to neighboring cities like Eden Valley, Avon, with similar populations in tax capacities and number of city employees? Mr. Evans.
Sorry, but I'm going to bring up facts and figures again. When it comes to different cities, I'm going to bring up Eden Valley. Richmond is, in my opinion, way ahead of Eden Valley. Their tax capacity is 120. So, and to Richmond's 68, I'm going to just call it 69. So, and when it comes to Avon, Avon's at 84, Richmond's at 69. So, when it comes to that and their population, I believe that comparing to those cities, we're doing fabulous, fantastic, whichever one you want to use. When it comes to city employees, I believe they have approximately the same amount, the same number. In fact, we even have the same people that take care of the sewer plant, I believe, here and in Avon. I'm not quite sure in Eden Valley. But we compare, we're doing well when it comes to tax capacity. I think one thing we have to worry about, though, is the attitude when it comes to the city versus the citizens. That I don't know if we, work as well as the other cities do. We have to have an open mind as city employees. And it's not our opinion, it's not our job to say this is the way it is. You folks are our boss. We take that information and we balance it out. That's the only thing that I believe the other communities might have a little bit better area to look at. But when it comes to financially, I believe that we're looking good. Now, the only question that I have is on these little facts and figures, and anybody after a while that wants to take a look at this tax capacity, I brought a couple extra sheets. It's kind of interesting to just dwell over. But this is Stearns County. If you know anything about Eden Valley, they have the township line going just onto the north side of their community. So you got to look at how is it really related in between Stearns County and Meeker County when it comes to Eden Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Hamish.
This is one of the questions that I proposed because I thought it was kind of interesting just to compare two towns that are actually really similar other than Hartley and Meeker County. Both cities average about 1,400, close to 1,500 people. Both cities have, I'm just going to give you some facts that I know off of this. Our city budget right now, we're running at 650,000. That's our budget for the year. That's what we turn into the county. The city of Eden Valley's budget is 750,000. The city of Avon runs about 850,000. That's what their budgets are. The city of Richmond, we have what I call 4.5 employees. You have 4 main full-time employees and you have one person that works part-time during the summer. And the city of Eden Valley and Avon both share 6 full-time employees. The other interesting fact that is the police department. Our city right now with our contract with Cold Spring, we pay about $171,000 a year for 24/7 coverage. The city of Eden Valley, which has their own police department, and they do not offer 24/7 service, and their budget is $190,000 plus just for the police department. And Avon's budget is right around $200,000. So you want to compare all our numbers. I feel Richmond is in better hands than the other two. We spend a lot less money on our main services, but in the end of the day, our tax capacity is still high, and we have to figure out a way to, like they always say, trim the fat. But there's only so much trimming you can do before you start taking services. And I don't want to see us take any services away from the residents, because obviously you guys are the ones that pay the taxes, and we should give you your best bang for your buck. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. Mrs. Monens.
I think we compare well, as the gentleman said as well too. I'm going to give you a lot of the data, and I could give you more data, but I think that's enough data, and it covers it all. We have a great community. I feel that we definitely compare very well to our neighboring cities, and I'm very proud as a resident and a member and a business owner of this community of that.
Thank you, Mrs. Monens. All right. This question, what is the biggest city burden and how do you feel it can be resolved? We'll start with Mr. Henish.
The biggest burden on the city is our high tax rate and our high fees. The only way we can hopefully get these resolved is by getting more businesses, more residents to help broaden that price tag out so everybody's paying less money. But as you all know, and Pat made reference to it, it's always a gamble to go find other businesses. You're never gonna, just because you have the property available does not necessarily mean people are gonna come. It has to be a win-win for everybody, the business and for the city. Obviously, more development is going to be the key, and maybe back to getting more properties to come in to the city so we can provide them services. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henish. Mrs. Mullins.
I think the biggest city burden is going to be, I'm going to piggyback off Jim here in regards to this, because it is the fees and it is the taxes. It's the economic growth that is lacking within this community in order to reduce those and grow our community. How can that be resolved? The honest answer is, if we can't do it in-house, we've got to look to go outside and find someone who is capable of helping our city fill the stores, build the businesses, and get the residents in our town. And that's really the bottom line. If we can't do it in-house, we've got to be willing to be open-minded enough to get the expert in that can get us there.
Thank you, Mrs. Monitz. Mr. Evans.
Okay, yes, we're talking taxes, we're talking fees, but I believe to start with, before we jump in a pool of 100 sharks out there and 90 businesses and they all want to take you to the cleaners, I think we have to streamline and think out of the box. I mean, we got to streamline our items. In the past week, I made the whole city, meeting a lot of residents I've never seen before that had moved in to places that the person really, I guess, permanently moved out, either died or moved to that little lot north of town. But just a couple of the ideas they brought to me, you know, it's electronic world, it's electronic wizardry. How come the city doesn't have online payment of their water bills? You can do that when it comes to your power company. You can do it when it comes to your gas company. You can pay it, you know, you can pay it on the couch, just dial it up, pay the bill. We wouldn't have to, you know, we could get rid of that $50 fee if it makes it a lot easier just to make a phone call and do it on the web or whatever. Did a little research on this to some people that turn their business into this type of an item, and they said it is very, very cheap to have this done. Talk to your financial institution. They will allow it to the payments dump into a separate fund, and then it would be balanced or reconciled daily, whatever. But the main thing is communication. Communication and streamlining. It's, you know, we're duplicating on some things. We can get down to streamlining. Let's say Cindy, our billing department, doesn't have to do half of the receiving of the payment anymore. Maybe she can work on grants. Maybe she can work on other items. So those are the type of things that I would look at. Besides, you know, taxes aren't going to go away. The city has to exist, you folks have to exist. So all we can do is make it as lean, mean, and a really great machine by going and making it, working with you people and communicating what's going on.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. All right, we're moving on to our 12th and final question. And after that question, there will be time, again, to ask these candidates a question. Again, if you do, generalize that question, and all three candidates can answer. So, I'm going to pose this question here. Why should you be the next mayor of Richmond? Mrs. Monitz.
I should be the next mayor of Richmond because I'm new. I want change. I want to hear what my community has to say. I want to be their leader, not their dictator. I want to make sure that, no offense to that, Jim. I didn't mean it directed at you, but I want to fill that gap. I've been spending my time out on my Facebook page for my mayor candidacy, and I'm hearing it over and over and over again about how there's that gap between the city and the residents and hearing them. Why should I be mayor? Because I haven't been mayor for 10 years. And it's time for a change, and I feel that I can do my very best to give the residents of this community the change that they're looking for.
Thank you, Mrs. Monens. Mr. Evans.
As your mayor, I would definitely have a goal. And the goal would be to work together with all the communities, whether it be the townships, whether it be the EDA, whether it would be the Chamber of Commerce, and work together, make it informative, knock down the barriers. You know, it's kind of interesting. We used to have all the items on the public news channel. I would publish every meeting. It doesn't make any difference if the neighboring cities knows that we're looking at something. There's no secrets. These are all public meetings. Let them know that we are going to be proactive. I would definitely go out after different grants, which I did when we were approached with the arena, when we were approached with some of the fire protection items, when we were approached with different types of grants that we can go after. You might have to have a matching one, and if the people are interested in it, they'll be there. I would definitely work with the community, such as we did with the park on the east end of town. I'll never forget when there's some 80-year-old people came out there and helped dig in trees when that was built. We had people donating the backhoe labor. We had people donating the trees, and we had the labor out there. That's the kind of organization that I would like to lead. That's the kind of organization I would be proud of being a member. Not only the leader, but I'll get my hands dirty also. So with that, as your mayor, I would be dedicated and devoted to the citizens and go on from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Hemish.
If I would be voted back into as your mayor, I would like to inform you that for the last 2 years, we've actually had an open public forum at every one of our meetings, something that our administrator has never wanted to have, but I always thought it was a great idea that if you as a resident would like to come to our council meeting and want to have a voice, it's kind of like an open town hall meeting. We're not going to give you a decision that night, but you could come and address the council, something that in the past was never allowed, because they said if you didn't get on the agenda, you couldn't come speak at a council meeting. To me, I made sure that got changed because I love to have the input, and we've had actually about 8 to 10 guests that have come in and voiced their opinions, and sometimes the council acted upon it, and sometimes we tabled it till the next meeting till we could find out more information. Some of the other things is that I would also make sure we're doing, which we are doing already, is we have direct deposit for your water bill. You don't have to pay it every month or every 2 months. You can have it directly taken out of your account, which is set up at the bank. And some of the other things that I'm proud that we've done in the last couple of years, if you've been out to the park, we kind of partnered with Falcon Bank on getting a new band shelter out there. So we have a nice place for the bands to come in for music in the park, and we're hoping to continue that. And also, if you go past the arena, Falcon Bank was nice enough to donate that to the city to have a brand new sign put up that's electronically controlled, which otherwise was just a sign with numbers and letters. So, in closing, I feel I've done I'm not going to say I did a great job. I did an okay job. There's still always room for error. There's always room for improvement. And I would like to continue to have dialogue with the townships and also keeping all the residents. I've had people come out to my house more times in the last 4 years than I did for the first 4 years I was there. And a lot of it was they're afraid to come up to City Hall to talk to the people up there. And I always tell them, well, explain what you want, and I will take it to the council, and we'll see how we can help you. And It usually only took about 1 month and they would get their answer back. Sometimes they like the answer, sometimes they don't. But to me, that's being proactive. You know, I should be the voice for every one of you. If you have a problem, you come to me, and if you can't get it addressed by council, I want you to come to me. I have never shied away from a problem that somebody has brought up to me. And I would like to continue to serve you as your mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. All right, now the part of the forum is we open it up to questions from the audience, and I invite you, if you have questions, you can come up, use this microphone, or if you feel comfortable just asking your question from out there, you certainly can. So we will open it up at this time. We'll go back to Pat as first then. Yes, you bet. Any questions from our audience? Yes, sir.
There are a number of questions that I have, but the first one I have is, why is Richmond not having a rental property ordinance that controls how rental properties are met? What the situation most cities have.
So the question is referring to, why does Richmond not have a rental property ordinance? Mr. Evans.
Well, I would have to do some research on this. The rental property basically would be in a multi-family development type of area, single home and a rental. Is that what you're referring to? So I'm not quite sure. I would have to check what other cities are doing. This is the first time it's ever been brought up, why we don't have an ordinance. I'm sure that it would be beneficial for the city, for the safety, because the houses would have to be inspected, and they definitely would have to, an occupancy type of okay, which your building inspector would have to give that okay too. Whether we do or not, I cannot tell you. I've never been asked this question, but that doesn't mean I can't do some research for you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Hamish?
I believe that your question is, if you're referring to the house being inspected, right now, when the city adopted the Minnesota State Building Code, they're supposed to go through that process of having, if you want to rent out your house, you're supposed to go through the process of notifying the city, and then the city gets the building inspector involved, and he comes out and inspects your house and gives it either the okay or the not okay. But I don't think we've ever enforced it that I've ever heard of. I mean, people have done it when two parties have parted ways in bad ways. They use the inspector as their get out of free jail card, but that's my understanding of that it comes back to the building code inspector that would actually be the one that's in charge of that.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. Mrs. Monitz?
I want to just be honest, I don't know about the ordinance, and I think Jim covered it well. Thank you, Jim. In regards to that, there's an ordinance, we should enforce it, and if there's not an ordinance, we definitely should look into that.
Thank you, Mrs. Monitz. Other questions? Any other questions? Yes.
Okay.
You want to stay right there? You certainly can.
Sure. Can you hear me, Mayor? Okay. My question is for all three of you. Thank you. First of all, I applaud you for being up there. It takes a lot of courage to do this. So I do thank you. And I do thank you also for your 10 years of service. I have voted for you in the past. So thank you very much for doing this. I also tried to be up there tonight, but I'm now the first house out of city limits, so I'm no longer eligible. So I will be counting on you to help take care of my 9-household family on one income. Even though we moved the first house out of city limits, we only moved 2 months ago. And I'd like to share quickly why we moved, and if you feel, my question is, do you feel it's acceptable, the reasons were our final straws? It's not 2 or 3 reasons why we moved, but the last 2 to 3 reasons were 2nd Street, Ivy, 2nd Street South there, was slated for 2018, was communicated to me as a taxpayer that my road would be done. I found out by calling Cindy, put on hold, it will be 2019. Thank you, appreciate that, even though I had to seek that information. What didn't happen though is that the frost fully came out in April and it took until July to fill in the hole that Norb Silvers has to cross over a 2x2 goiter in the road in order to get his mail. I lost the alignment on my Traverse, which cost me $300. I called again. The reason it's not done, and this is what I like to know, is if this is acceptable. The reason it wasn't done was because we have to schedule sharing this equipment. The frost was out in April. The project was already delayed a year. I'm not delinquent on my taxes, and I do pay the water bill. I couldn't afford that either. I'm going to be really full of humility here. I know about that late charge. Cindy and I are on a first name basis. My family of 9 and I couldn't do it anymore. 1 income or 2 incomes. It's because of the water bill and the street, and I had to fork over $300 for my alignment. We put our house up for sale. Thankful for the city, we got 3 offers in 6 days. We left. We left in 31 days. You will still continue to get your taxes, but you're now going to lose out on 7 people, because there's 2 people in the home. You're losing out on 7 more people's of the water bill. I would like to know, is it fair that we chose to move from North Point in Cold Spring, where we lived for 4 years, to come here? We chose here. We chose that home. Is it fair that a resident is now the first house out of city limits so they can go, I don't have to worry about my street anymore getting filled in timely because I now have a different avenue to address that with. I don't have to worry about my water bill anymore. And Cindy and I can maybe have more friendly conversations versus being the pest that's calling and emailing her all the time. I'd like to know, is that acceptable? Because I will also be influencing the 7 children, whether they stay here or they move out of town one day. And I do appreciate your time.
Thank you for your comments. Our candidates fully understand what she is addressing here. Mr. Hamish, we'll start with you.
I understand your pain on that street. Just for a side note, my parents built their brand new house right next to your house
Yes.
22 years or maybe 23 years ago, and the road was bad at that time. And that was long before I got on the council, and one of my goals when I got on the council was to get that road fixed. And every year it's come down to, well, we can't put it on the project. We can't add it to the project. We can't add it. But 2019, it is getting done because we said that was one that was not leaving no matter what. And just for a small tidbit, that whole road from virtually First Street South all the way down to the clinic down there, you're looking at about $450,000 to do that little street. I know it's a little street, it's 3 blocks, but it's important to those people that live on it, which isn't fair that that street has never been done. We've tried band-aiding it for the last couple of years, but ever since the Main Street project, there hasn't been any big projects. And I'll just give you a little tidbit on if we were to do that project out by itself, that means we're gonna take all taxpayers' money and do the project. Now by adding it to the 2019 project, we're looking at getting about 30 to 40% of it paid by other people that do not live here in forms of grants and other money that we get for water and sewer and stuff like that. I'm sorry for you not having the services that you should expect. I mean, everybody else in the city here, when your road gets bad, we try to fix them as soon as we can. You're the one example that should never happen in a city like Richmond. I'm sorry about that. Thank
I
you.
appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. Mrs. Munns.
Thank you. I'm going to just answer your question quite directly. Is it fair? No. Is it acceptable? Absolutely not. It's not acceptable to lose a resident to one house outside the city. I understand what Jim is saying as well too, and he has to make the hard choice regarding this project is, do you repair that road, and that justifies it in regards to the project that is coming up. But I know that road, I walk that road often, almost daily, and those potholes just aren't acceptable. They're not, they're dangerous. So there's my answer.
Thank you, Mrs. Munns. Mr. Evans.
Definitely, it's not acceptable and that's why I was mentioning early in the presentation that looking at a 5-year or 10-year plan sometimes is not acceptable in the first place. You have to fix items when they come up. you have to budget, so you do have a little bit of a cushion there, and you got to take care of those items. Whether you would have moved or not, if I would have been in office, I'm not saying one way or the other. Yes, that road goes by one of my pieces of property too, a little bit further south. One problem with that road that probably should have been looked at a long time ago is the heavy equipment that moves through there. There's a lot of heavy equipment that gets delivered through there that should be probably detoured and go down Central. That's a well-built road versus the side roads. And that would be an item to look at too, is to find out if we should have truck routes in town versus just open thoroughfares for everybody to drive in. Depends on the weight. In spring and the fall, the weight of the trucks definitely do break up roads a lot faster. So to answer your question, no, it's not acceptable. My answer would have been, yes, we should put that on as soon as possible, and I'm not one to wait 5 to 10 years.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Any other questions from our audience? Any other questions? Yes.
I didn't want to go back to back, but I do have a couple of questions like you, sir, tonight. My question is about communication. So my example about how it took me calling Cindy, me stopping in at Cindy, and me emailing Cindy, there was a lack of communication there, and Mayor, I think you would agree with that. It wasn't, it shouldn't take 5 months, we weren't notified, etc. I would like to know, because we're not allowed to ask any of you directly, I'm forced to ask all 3 of you this here. I would like to ask one of you directly. My question is, how are you going to reach communication-wise the elderly and the 13-year-old? What will be your methods that you personally find acceptable to share citywide communications?
Thank you. We'll start with Emily. Are you asking day-to-day communications or monthly communications or?
Newsletters, happenings in the city, do they find Facebook, social media, the website, do they think that they are up to par and they're communicating consistently, timely? Basically the marketing piece to the Richmond residents. Are they reaching everyone? If they do, then I guess this question doesn't apply. If they don't feel we're reaching everyone, what methods would they take in order to reach everyone?
Okay, looking at the methods you would take to reach everyone. Mrs. Munt.
Thank you. Communications with the community. So I might not have a lot of sweet spots up here talking tonight, but this is one of my sweet spots. I have a marketing background. I've spent years in marketing and sales, and she kind of hit the nail on the head like that. We don't do a quality job in reaching all of our residents in the way each of our residents needs to be able to connect to the city. It is our website is in my opinion under par for where it should be for resources as a resident. I feel that we have a great opportunity to communicate as well as build our businesses with the sign out by the arena. Understanding the value of social media and the generation that is targeted at is quite viable in regards to communicating with them. We need to meet both the young and the old at their levels. We have to have a paper newsletter that is going out on a regular basis. We have to have an email system. I believe that we should have a notification system of some sort. And all of these things are pretty low-cost items when it comes to communications. We can do a better job at it because I think people are feeling hopeless about it, tired of it. At least I kind of am, and to build that up. If we can connect the residents to what the city is doing, that's community engagement. We need to invest the residents into what the city is doing. They're going to stay, they're going to want to be heard, and they're going to take part in what we're doing as a community, and that's key.
Thank you, Mrs. Monitz. Mr. Evans.
Okay, social media. I'm kind of a dinosaur when it comes to that. I kind of have big thumbs that don't type very well text. But I do watch TV, I do answer surveys, and there's no reason why the city could not send out a survey to every resident of all ages to find out what would be the contact points. Would it be newsletters to the people that don't have computers? They are people like that. There are people that don't have smartphones. I keep on saying I have a dumb phone, it does one thing, it calls me. That's all I need it for. So, when it comes to a lot of social media, that's fabulous for that age group. I think we should use it, yes. But we have to find out exactly what would be the best, and that would be some type of a survey. I tried a couple of years ago to get a survey. I spent some time with an individual on a road trip to pick up some equipment or something, and we came up with his idea of a survey. I brought it to the council a couple times, and it basically was a survey to compliment themselves. I don't want a survey to compliment me. I want a survey to find out the problems. I want one to find out that, no, we're not doing the job right. No, we're not getting it onto the web. No, we're not getting it to the newsletter. That's the type of survey I like. So with that, my answer to that question is, how am I going to hit young and old? First, I got to know how old and how young. And with that, a survey would tell me that answer. Then we would take the next step, and if we would have to have a web director or some person to improve our website, it would be money well spent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Amish.
Letting people know how the city's doing or what the city's doing. Obviously, we have the website, which covers a lot of basic things like the arena, the parks, and the schedules for Little League and hockey and all those types of things. And of course, nobody likes to look at their water bill, and that's usually where 6 times a year you get a letter or notes from the city that this is going on or that's going on. And like everybody else, nobody likes a letter from the city, so we're not going to mail you letters, because every time you think we mail you a letter, we're asking for more money. So we went away from trying to mail things out. We'd rather send them out with your water bill. You know, it's kind of like you get 2 bad things at once. Obviously, we post everything in the Cold Spring Record that we do. Our meetings are on Channel 10, and we've actually posted other things on there as well, like common events. We always try to put them on there. And obviously, we have to move on to the computer age sometime, but like Pat said, I'm kind of with him with the smartphone with the dumb operator. But, you know, somewhere down the line, the city's going to have to go down that road of, you know, getting to people directly and quicker. And like Emily said back there before, you know, it shouldn't have taken 2-3 months, or it shouldn't have taken her calling up to City Hall to get an answer. You know, somewhere along the line, we dropped the ball on our end, and that's going to have to be something that we're going to have to address and figure out how to, when somebody comes and asks a question or has a problem, that we get back to them. And, you know, if that's a checklist or however, and, you know, it's always hard to get out to get to every house, because there's a lot of people. I mean, obviously you guys all found out about this tonight, but guess what? There's 1,400 people that live in this city, and yet we have probably about 80 people in here if we're lucky. You know, to me, it's like, how do you get to the other people and get them enthused enough to come and be part of city politics? You know, and part of that is, you know, we have 2 open council seats that nobody's running for. So, you know, it goes to show that there's not, on our end, we asked for people to run, but we didn't see it happen either. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. All right, if there's no other questions from the audience, we've reached, yes.
Just what are your views on low-income housing, and do you ever see it in the future of Richmond?
Your views on low-income housing, and if you ever see the future of?
I see it as a future option, or maybe somebody has stats on that, if there is some sort of subsidized housing within Richmond.
Okay, so your views on low-income housing, and if there's ever a future in that low-income housing here in Richmond, or some subsidized housing. We'll move to Mr. Evans.
Okay. First of all, there is difference between low income and subsidized housing. And you know, it all depends on what you're talking about. Are we going to open the doors and subsidize housing for every individual to come in? I'm not quite sure that would be to benefit Richmond. But to subsidize it to the point where we have working adults, working families that don't have the savings yet to purchase a house, and to go through the Stearns County HUD program or whatever type like that, I believe there's room for that. There definitely has to be room for all incomes, all ways of life, and all ages.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Hamish.
I don't know if I would call it low-income housing. I would call it affordable housing, because low-income housing gives it a bad ring. But if you look at affordable housing, you know, for some people, affordable housing is a $150,000 home, and the next person it's $300,000. That's their affordability. But for Richmond, I mean, we've had talk about the Aho addition out there that they would like to put in, you know, average homes. They're looking at homes from $150,000 to $200,000 homes. So I don't know what does that fall under low-income housing, or does that fall under affordable housing? It all depends on how you want to look at it. You know, we've had a nice little addition here on Main Street with the triplex that went up. I mean, they're not cheap either, but yet, where does that fall? Everybody has their own opinion of what you call low income and subsidized housing. I'd rather see us, you know, make housing affordable so people can live here and stay here. I mean, it's nothing worse than to see a family grow up and the kids get older and they disappear because they can't afford to buy a house here. They got to go someplace else. I would love to see families stay here and be able to keep building houses and be affordable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. Mrs. Mons.
It's a great question. I'd love to see more rental properties in our community. I watched my eldest son and all of his friends leave this area. Affordable housing is necessary. And you know what? I had my oldest son when I was 19. I lived in low-income housing. There's differences. There's certainly pros and cons in regards to that. So it's kind of a broad question, Tina, because what exactly are we talking about? I think that it would be a mistake not to allow affordable, so I'm going to go regular housing, affordable housing, and then low-income housing. A sliding scale based rental property, multi-unit rental property makes sense. We've got single parents in our community living off of one income. It's tough. And if you're young and you haven't finished school and you haven't got a career path, it's tough. Let's support them. Along with, I think I'm just going to stop there. I think that answers it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Monitz. Other questions? All right, seeing none, I want to thank you for your attendance tonight. Thank you to Mr. Evans, Mr. Hamish, Mrs. Monitz for their answering of questions tonight. This open forum is a little different than a debate because it gives us an opportunity to hear them without the candidates being challenged. Now, these candidates certainly are not opposed to you coming up to them on the streets and talking to them about questions, and I encourage you to do that before the general election. I want to thank Tina and Terry again for offering the Old Coliseum as a venue tonight, to the Civic and Commerce for putting this event together, and to you for your attendance, because it is so important. This is where grassroots politics starts. It starts in your small communities, and thank you for making that commitment to be here tonight. With that, I applaud our candidates and I applaud you.